Ambassador Sarah Chen stared at the holographic document floating above her desk. She had read it 3 times now, but the words still made her stomach turn. The blue text of Directive 847C glowed softly in her dark office aboard the human embassy. Station. Mandatory behavioral modification protocols for all human offspring between ages 5 to 16, she read aloud to the empty room, to correct aggressive tendencies and promote galactic harmony. Sarah had served as Earth's primary representative to the Galactic Council for 8 years. She had swallowed her pride countless times, smiled politely through insults, and watched as humanity was treated like children at the adults' table. But this was different. This crossed every line. The door chimed and her assistant Marcus walked in. His usually cheerful face was grim. Ambassador, the council chamber is ready for your response. Sarah stood up slowly. She was tired. Tired of being talked down to by species that had never faced real hardship. Tired of watching human innovations be dismissed as crude, while the same ideas were praised when presented by council favorites. Most of all, she was tired of being told that humanity needed to be fixed. The walk to the council chamber felt longer than usual. The station's corridors were filled with beings from across the galaxy. The tall, graceful Althari with their silver skin, the insect-like Zephyrians clicking as they walked, the massive Gorvani floating in their mobility suits. All of them had looked down on humanity since first contact 33 years ago. The council chamber was a massive dome, with seats arranged in perfect circles around the central speaking platform. Representatives from 847 species sat in order of their development level. Humanity sat in the outer ring along with the other junior species. Council Prime Vaxton, an Althari with skin that seemed to shimmer like liquid metal, called the session to order. His voice echoed through the chamber with automatic translation reaching every ear. We gather today to hear the human response to Directive 847C, Vaxton announced. The Council has determined that human children require guidance to become proper galactic citizens. Sarah walked to the central platform. Around her, hundreds of alien eyes watched with expressions ranging from boredom to disgust. She had given speeches here before, always carefully worded, always diplomatic. Not today. Honored Council, she began, her voice steady. Humanity respectfully declines to implement Directive 847C. A ripple of clicking, chirping, and other sounds went through the chamber. Several representatives were clearly amused. One Gorvani's translator picked up his comment. The children refuse to be disciplined. Counselor Threx, a Zephyrian whose mandibles clacked when he spoke, leaned forward. Ambassador Chen, perhaps you misunderstand. This is not a request. This is a directive from the Council. Your species will comply. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. And if we refuse? Then humanity will face the consequences of defying galactic law, Vaxton replied smoothly. Economic sanctions, technology restrictions, possible suspension from Council membership. You would punish an entire species because we won't let you reprogram our children? We would guide a backward species toward civilization, another voice called out from the Korthani section. Laughter followed. Sarah looked around the chamber. These beings spoke of humanity like they were discussing a pet that needed training. They saw human emotion as weakness, human curiosity as dangerous, human independence as rebellion that needed to be crushed. May I ask? Sarah said quietly. What specific behaviors you plan to modify? Vaxton gestured, and a new hologram appeared. Human children display concerning traits. Excessive questions about authority, risk-taking behavior, emotional outbursts when faced with restrictions. These must be corrected. You want to remove curiosity from our children. We want to remove chaos, Threx corrected. Human children refuse to accept proper guidance. They question everything, even when the answers are beyond their understanding. Sarah nodded slowly. I see. And which species will be administering this modification? The Althari have graciously offered their expertise, Vaxton replied. They have successfully guided several younger species toward proper development. Sarah had read about those successes. The Villani had once been explorers and inventors. Now they were quiet, obedient, and hadn't produced a single new idea in 2 centuries. The Morthek had been warriors and poets. Now they were efficient, workers who never questioned orders. "How long do you give us to begin implementation?" Sarah asked. 60 of your days, Vax then announced. "Modification centers will be established on your major worlds. All human children will be processed within 2 standard years." Processed. Sarah repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "Like data. Like future galactic citizens," Vax then corrected, coldly. Sarah stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of hundreds of stares. In her mind, she could see human children laughing, asking endless questions, building impossible things just to see if they could. She thought of her own daughter back on Earth, who wanted to be an explorer like the old Earth stories. "Very well," Sarah said finally. "Humanity will provide our response within 60 days. The chamber erupted in satisfied sounds from various species. They had expected more fight from the humans. Sarah walked back to her seat with her head held high, ignoring the smug looks from other representatives. But as she sat down, Sarah was already thinking about the message she would send to Earth tonight. Not through official channels, those were monitored. She would use the old codes, the ones established when humanity first encountered species that might not have their best interests at heart. The session continued with other business, but Sarah barely heard it. In her mind, she was already composing a very different kind of message than what the council expected. Not a plea for mercy or a request for negotiation. A warning. That night, alone in her quarters, Sarah activated her personal communication array. She entered a series of codes that most of the galaxy didn't even know existed. When the connection was secure, she spoke 3 simple words. Protocol 7, execute. On the other end of the transmission, deep in the Sol system, Admiral James Harrison heard the message. He looked out at the fleet of ships that officially didn't exist, at the research stations hidden in asteroid fields, at the manufacturing facilities that produced things no one was supposed to know about. "Send the word," he told his communications officer. "All human worlds, all stations, all ships, Protocol 7 is active." Across the galaxy, humans received the message. Not just military personnel or government officials, but ordinary people who had been quietly preparing for this day since humanity first realized what kind of galaxy they really lived in. Teachers began making arrangements for their students. Parents started packing bags. Engineers began final system checks on projects that had been decades in the making. The Galactic Council thought they were about to discipline a child. They had no idea they had just woken up something that had been waiting 33 years for the right moment to show them what humanity was truly capable of. The 60-day countdown had begun, but the Council had made one critical error in their calculations. They assumed humanity would spend those 60 days begging for mercy. Instead, humanity was about to disappear. Captain Elena Vasquez watched the cargo ships dock at Luna Station through her office window. To anyone monitoring the traffic, it looked like normal trade operations. Food shipments, medical supplies, consumer goods. Nothing unusual. What the monitors couldn't see were the passenger manifests that didn't exist and the cargo containers with hidden compartments. "Status report," Elena said to her second-in-command, Lieutenant Torres. "Evacuation is ahead of schedule," Torres replied, checking his tablet. "We've moved 12,000 civilians off-world in the past week. The Council thinks they're just taking extended vacations or visiting family." Elena nodded. It had taken 30 years to set up the networks they were using now. When humanity first joined the galactic community, some people had been suspicious. They noticed how other species looked at humans, how they talked about humanity when they thought no one was listening. Those suspicious people had started making plans. They called themselves the contingency. Not officially, because official groups could be tracked and monitored. Instead, they were teachers who quietly taught children skills not found in standard curriculums. Engineers who designed systems with hidden capabilities. Traders who mapped routes through empty space. Military officers who ran exercises that weren't in any official records. For 30 years, They had prepared for the day when humanity might need to leave the galactic community behind. That day had arrived. "Any problems with the council monitors?" Elena asked. "None so far," Torres replied. "Our AI is feeding them normal traffic patterns. As far as they know, human shipping is actually down this month." The AI Torres mentioned was called Spartacus, though that name appeared nowhere in official records. It had been built in pieces across dozens of human worlds, each part seeming innocent by itself. When assembled, it was capable of things that would have terrified the council. Elena's communicator chimed. "Captain, this is Doc 7. We have a problem." Elena sighed. "What kind of problem?" "A Zephyrian inspection team just arrived. They want to examine our manifest records." This was exactly what they had prepared for. "Send them to conference room C. I'll be right there." Elena straightened her uniform and walked to the meeting room. 3 Zephyrians were waiting, their insect-like forms clicking nervously. The lead inspector, whose translator identified him as Keck 7, approached her. "Captain Vasquez, we are conducting routine inspections of human facilities. The council wants to ensure all species are maintaining proper standards." "Of course," Elena replied politely. "What can I show you?" For the next 2 hours, Elena guided the inspectors through Luna Station. They saw exactly what she wanted them to see. Normal operations, standard cargo, routine maintenance, the hidden levels, the modified ships, the people sleeping in concealed compartments. None of that appeared on their tour. "Your security seems adequate," Keck 7 finally admitted. "Though we notice your population has decreased recently. Many families are taking vacations before the children start their new education programs," Elena replied smoothly. "You know how humans are about family time." The Zephyrian made a sound that might have been amusement. "Yes, your species does seem overly attached to your offspring. This will be corrected soon enough." Elena kept her expression neutral, but inside she felt cold anger. These beings talked about human children like they were defective products that needed fixing. After the inspectors left, Elena returned to her office and activated a secure channel. "Phoenix Base, this is Luna Station. Package delivery is proceeding on schedule." "Confirmed, Luna Station," came the reply from a location that officially didn't exist. "All nests are reporting successful transfers. Timeline remains stable." Elena looked at the data streaming across her screens. In the past week, human populations had dropped by 8% across the galaxy. Not all at once, not in any pattern that would trigger alarms. Just steady, quiet movement that looked like normal civilian travel. Meanwhile, in the Vega system, Dr. Sarah Kim was overseeing the final stages of Project Looking Glass. Her research station was officially studying stellar formation. Unofficially, it was humanity's most advanced technology development facility. "How are our new toys coming along?" she asked her lead engineer, Dr. Patel. "The quantum drives are performing better than expected," Patel replied. "We can move a ship the size of a battlecruiser without leaving any trace in hyperspace. And the other projects? Stealth coding is ready for mass production. The weapon systems are..." Patel paused. "They're things the galaxy has never seen before." Dr. Kim nodded. Humanity had been studying galactic technology for 3 decades, but they hadn't just been learning. They had been improving, combining concepts in ways that supposedly advanced species had never considered. The council called human approaches crude and inelegant. They preferred solutions that followed established patterns, methods that had worked for thousands of years. Humans preferred solutions that worked, period. "What about the Psychological Warfare Division?" Dr. Kim asked. "Ready to deploy," Patel said with a slight smile. "The council has no idea what's coming." Across human space, similar conversations were happening. Military commanders were reviewing final attack plans. Civilian coordinators were checking evacuation schedules. Engineers were running last tests on weapons that broke every galactic law about proper warfare. On Earth, President Martinez stood in the Situation Room beneath the Capitol building. The walls were covered with displays showing human populations, fleet positions, and council activities across the galaxy. "Status report," she said to the room. 37% of human civilians are now at secure locations, reported General Santos. Council monitoring shows normal activity levels. They suspect nothing. And our military assets? 70% have been quietly moved to staging areas. The remaining 30% are maintaining normal patrol schedules to avoid suspicion. President Martinez looked at the display showing Council fleet positions. Massive ships filled with beings who thought humanity needed to be taught proper behavior. Ships that would soon discover what proper human behavior actually looked like when humans stopped pretending to be harmless. What's the word from our embedded assets? She asked. Intelligence Director Chen stepped forward. Our people in Council facilities report that planning for the human behavioral modification program is proceeding. They're actually excited about it. They think they're about to solve the human problem permanently. President Martinez felt the same cold anger that Elena had experienced. For 30 years, humanity had tried to be good galactic citizens. They had followed rules that made no sense, accepted insults with polite smiles, and watched as their children were told that human nature was something to be ashamed of. Now the Council wanted to change human children into something else entirely. They wanted to remove the very things that made humans human. Time to final phase? Martinez asked. 18 days, General Santos replied. All assets will be in position, all civilians will be secure, and all preparations will be complete. Good. Martinez looked around the room at the faces of people who had spent years preparing for this moment. Send the final message to Ambassador Chen. Tell her that humanity appreciates the Council's generous offer, but we must respectfully decline. And the real message? Director Chen asked. Tell her it's time to come home, Martinez said quietly. All of them, every human in Council space, because in 18 days there won't be a Council space anymore. The evacuation continued. To outside observers, it looked like humans were finally accepting their place in the galactic order. Trade continued, diplomatic communications remained polite, and human representatives attended Council meetings with apparent cooperation. But deep in the dark spaces between stars, in hidden bases that had been decades in the making, humanity was preparing to show the galaxy something they had never seen before, a species that refused to be caged. Council Prime Vaxthen stood on the bridge of the massive inspection vessel Eternal Harmony as it approached Earth's solar system. Behind him, a fleet of 30 ships carried the equipment and personnel needed to establish the first human behavioral modification centers. Finally, muttered Councillor Threx, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. The humans have stopped their pathetic protests and accepted reality. Vaxthen nodded. For the past 2 weeks, human representatives had been remarkably cooperative. They had provided facility locations, population data, and administrative support for the modification program. It was exactly what the Council expected once a species realized resistance was futile. Sir, called the navigation officer, a young Althari named Kalesh. We're receiving standard approach clearances from human traffic control. Everything appears normal. Excellent, Vaxthen replied. Begin final approach to Earth. As the fleet moved deeper into the Sol system, something felt wrong to Kalesh, though he couldn't identify what. The system looked exactly as it should. Ships moved along proper traffic lanes. Stations broadcasted normal identification signals. Planets rotated in their expected positions, but the traffic seemed light. Sir, Kalesh said hesitantly, I'm reading only 60% of normal civilian traffic in the system. The humans are probably hiding, Threx suggested with amusement, afraid to see their betters arrive. Vaxthen wasn't concerned. Human populations often fluctuated, and their chaotic nature made them unpredictable. The important thing was that human authorities were cooperating with Council directives. The fleet entered Earth orbit without incident. Below them, the blue-green world that had produced so much trouble for galactic peace looked serene and beautiful. Cities glowed with lights. Weather patterns swirled across continents, and everything seemed perfectly normal. Deploying landing forces, reported the tactical officer. First wave will establish Command Center Alpha in the human capital region. Vaxthen watched as transport ships descended toward Earth's surface. In a few hours, the transformation of humanity would begin. Human children would be gathered, processed, and returned to their families as proper galactic citizens. The dangerous traits that made humans so unpredictable would be corrected. The galaxy would finally be safe from human chaos. 2 hours later, Vax then received a communication that changed everything. Council Prime, came the voice of Ground Commander. Zex-9, we have a situation. What kind of situation? Vax then asked, though something in the commander's tone made his skin crawl. Sir, the cities are empty. Vax then felt the temperature in the bridge seem to drop. Explain. We've landed at 7 major population centers. Traffic lights are functioning. Power grids are active. Communication networks are operational. But there are no humans anywhere. That's impossible, Threx snapped. Scans showed normal population levels. The scans were correct, sir, Zex-9 replied. But the populations aren't here anymore. We found meals still warm on tables, vehicles abandoned in streets, personal belongings left behind. It's like every human on the planet simply vanished. Vax then stared at the image of Earth rotating slowly below. 12 billion humans lived on that world. They couldn't just disappear. Expand the search, he ordered. Check every city, every settlement, every facility. For the next 6 hours, reports came in from across Earth. The pattern was the same everywhere. Empty homes, abandoned workplaces, deserted schools. No signs of struggle, no distress signals, no bodies. Just empty spaces where human life should have been. Sir, Kelesh called out, his voice shaking slightly. I'm getting similar reports from human colonies throughout the
galaxy.
What reports? Vax then demanded. Mars colony, empty. Alpha Centauri settlements, empty. New Terra, New Hope, Freedom Station. All empty, sir. Every human world and facility we can contact reports the same thing. The bridge fell silent except for the humming of ship systems. Vax then tried to process what he was hearing. Humanity had over 800 worlds, stations, and outposts scattered across the galaxy. They couldn't all be empty. Get me the Council emergency session, Vax then ordered. Within an hour, the emergency hologram conference was assembled. Representatives from major council species appeared as glowing figures around the bridge. All of them looked confused and concerned. Explain this situation immediately, demanded High Counselor Morvek of the Gorvani. How does an entire species disappear? We don't know, Vax then admitted. Our scans show no signs of violence, no evidence of evacuation ships, no trace of where they went. This is clearly some kind of human trick, Threx insisted. They're hiding, trying to avoid the modification process. 12 billion beings don't hide, snapped Counselor Yex of the Korthani. This is something else. Chief Science Advisor Kelm, a brilliant Althari theorist, appeared in the hologram. I've been analyzing the data. The power consumption patterns suggest the populations vanished gradually over several weeks, not all at once. But our monitoring systems showed normal human activity throughout that period. How is that possible? Morvek asked. Either our monitoring systems were compromised, Kelm replied slowly, or the humans have technology we don't know about. The implications hit everyone at the same time. If humans could fool galactic monitoring systems for weeks while evacuating their entire species, what else could they do? Check our strategic installations, Morvek ordered. All of them. The reports that came back over the next few hours painted a picture that made Council leadership increasingly nervous. Human workers at Council facilities throughout the galaxy had simply failed to report for work. Human ships had developed mechanical problems that required them to return to ports that were now empty. Most disturbing of all, human technical specialists who had maintained critical systems for Council operations were nowhere to be found. Sir, a Gorvani communications specialist reported to Morvek, we're getting reports of system failures across 17 sectors. Power grids, communication, networks, manufacturing facilities, they're all going offline. How many of those systems were maintained by humans? Morvek asked, though he already suspected the answer. Approximately 80%, sir. The full scope of what had happened began to sink in. Humanity hadn't just disappeared. They had removed themselves from every system they had helped build, every process they had supported, every service they had provided. The galactic economy was beginning to collapse. "Find them," Vax then ordered his fleet commanders. "Scan every asteroid, every moon, every empty system. They have to be somewhere." But even as he gave the orders, Vax then felt a growing dread. Humans had been part of galactic civilization for 30 years. They had seemed primitive, chaotic, and harmless. The Council had thought they understood humanity perfectly. Now 12 billion humans had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a galaxy that was suddenly discovering how much it had depended on the species they had dismissed as inferior, and somewhere in the dark spaces between the stars, humanity was watching, waiting, preparing to show the galaxy that they had made a terrible mistake. The Council had wanted to change human children to make them less dangerous. They were about to learn that they should have been worried about human adults instead. Admiral James Harrison stood in the command center of Phoenix Base, watching the holographic display that showed Council fleets scattered across human space. For 3 weeks, they had been searching desperately for any sign of humanity. They found nothing but empty worlds and failing infrastructure. "Status report," Harrison said to his staff. "All civilian populations are secure in the deep stations," reported Colonel Martinez. "Zero casualties, zero detection. The Council still has no idea where we are." Harrison nodded. The deep stations were humanity's greatest achievement. Massive installations built in the empty space between star systems, using technology that the Council had dismissed as impossible. Hidden in the cosmic background radiation, powered by fusion reactors that left no detectable signature, they were invisible to galactic sensors. "And our surprise packages?" "Deployed and ready," said Captain Williams, his tactical officer. "Ghost, Fleet Alpha is in position at Vega. Beta is ready at Procyon. Gamma is standing by at Wolf 359. The Ghost fleets were ships that officially didn't exist, built with materials that didn't appear on any galactic registry, using designs that broke every rule of proper starship construction. They were fast, heavily armed, and most importantly, completely undetectable until they wanted to be seen. "Sir," called Lieutenant Kim from the communications station, "we're receiving reports from our observation posts. Council fleets are experiencing significant equipment failures." Harrison smiled grimly. For 30 years, humans had been the galaxy's favorite technicians. They fixed what was broken, improved what was inefficient, and maintained systems that other species couldn't understand. What the galaxy didn't realize was that humans had been very careful about how they provided those services. Every system humans had touched contained hidden subroutines, backdoors, and remote access protocols. With the press of a button, human technicians could shut down power grids, disable communication networks, or cause critical systems to develop mysterious problems. The galaxy was discovering that they couldn't function without the species they had tried to correct. "Time to begin Phase 2, Harrison announced. Across the galaxy, Council forces were dealing with crisis after crisis. On the industrial world of Kepler 442, the entire manufacturing grid had shut down when human-maintained fusion reactors went offline. The Althari Council there was frantically trying to restart systems that humans had operated for decades. At the same time, in the Rigel system, Council Fleet Commander Vex 3 was staring at his tactical display in confusion. "Sir," his sensor operator reported, "I'm detecting unknown ships at the edge of the system." "How many ships?" Vex 3 asked. "I count 37 vessels. Configuration unknown. They don't match any design in our databases." Vex 3 frowned. His fleet contained 58 ships, including 3 massive battle cruisers. "Unknown vessels. Shouldn't pose a threat. Hail them," he ordered. A few moments later, a human face appeared on the main screen. Vex 3 had seen humans before, but this one was different. Cold eyes, military bearing, and an expression that suggested he was looking at something he intended to destroy. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Liberation Fleet," the woman said. "You are ordered to withdraw from human space immediately." Vex 3 almost laughed. "Human? But humans have disappeared. And even if they hadn't, 37 ships against 58? You cannot be serious." "We are very serious," Chen replied. You have 60 seconds to begin withdrawal or we will remove you. Remove us. Vex 3 clicked his mandibles in amusement. With what weapons? Human technology is decades behind ours. Chen's expression didn't change. 50 seconds. Vex 3 cut the communication and turned to his weapons officer. Destroy them. What happened next would be studied by military academicians for centuries. The unknown ship suddenly vanished from sensors, reappearing moments later in completely different positions. Council weapons fired at empty space while return fire came from directions that shouldn't have been possible. The human ships moved like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They didn't follow proper fleet formations or engage according to established tactical doctrine. Instead, they used hit-and-run attacks, false retreats, and coordinated strikes that confused and overwhelmed Council forces. How are they doing this? Vex 3 demanded as his ships were picked apart one by one. Sir, their ships appear to be using some kind of quantum displacement drive, his science officer reported. And their weapons, they're not energy-based or projectile-based. They seem to be manipulating space-time itself. Within 20 minutes, Vex 3's fleet was reduced to burning wreckage. His own ship was crippled, life support failing, weapons offline. Captain Chen appeared on his screen again. Next time we won't give you 60 seconds, she said calmly. Then the transmission ended. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Council fleets that had been sent to search for humans instead found themselves under attack by forces that fought like nothing they had ever encountered. The humans didn't line up their ships and exchange fire according to proper military doctrine. They used ambush tactics, stealth technology, and weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Most disturbing of all, they showed no interest in taking prisoners or following the galactic rules of warfare. On the Council homeworld, emergency sessions were being held around the clock. High Counselor Morvek floated in his mobility suit, studying reports that made no sense. How many fleets have we lost? He asked his military advisor. 17 so far, Admiral Kex Prime replied, with more under attack as we speak. And we still don't know where they're operating from? No, sir, they appear, attack, and disappear. Our sensors can't track them. Science Advisor Kelm appeared via hologram, his normally calm demeanor shaken. High Counselor, I've been analyzing the human weapons. They're using technologies we thought were purely theoretical. Gravitational manipulation, quantum phase shifting, temporal distortion fields. How is that possible? Morvek demanded. Human science was primitive. Apparently not, Kelm replied grimly. Either they've been hiding their true capabilities for decades, or they've developed all of this since they disappeared. The truth was both simpler and more terrifying than the Council could imagine. Humans had indeed been hiding their capabilities, but they had also been learning. Every interaction with galactic technology had been studied, reverse-engineered, and improved upon. What took other species millennia to develop, humans had accomplished in decades through pure determination and refusal to accept limitations. The Council had mistaken human adaptability for primitiveness. They had seen human willingness to learn as evidence of inferiority. They had completely misunderstood what they were dealing with. Sir, the communications officer called to Morvek. We're receiving a galaxy-wide transmission. It's on all frequencies, impossible to block. Put it through, Morvek ordered. The face that appeared was older than Chen's, with gray hair and scars that spoke of a military career. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. This is Admiral Harrison of the Human Defense Force, the man said. For 33 years, humanity has tried to be good galactic citizens. We followed your rules, accepted your insults, and tried to find our place in your civilization. You responded by deciding our children needed to be reprogrammed to better suit your preferences. Harrison's expression hardened. That was a mistake. You have seen what we are capable of when we stop pretending to be harmless. What you have experienced so far is merely a demonstration. We are offering you one chance to avoid learning what human warfare truly looks like. Withdraw all Council forces from human space. Abandon your behavioral modification programs. Recognize humanity as an independent power with full sovereignty over our worlds and people. You have 72 hours to comply. The transmission ended. leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. They were no longer dealing with a junior species that needed guidance. They were facing an enemy that had been preparing for war for 30 years. High Counselor Morvek's response came 57 hours after Admiral Harrison's ultimatum. The massive council fleet that emerged from hyperspace near Earth was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Over 3,000 ships from dozens of species, carrying enough firepower to crack planets. Human Admiral, Morvek's voice boomed across all communication channels. You will surrender immediately. Your species will submit to behavioral modification or face complete annihilation. This is not negotiable. Admiral Harrison stood on the bridge of the hidden command station that had become humanity's true capital. Around him, displays showed the massive council fleet positioning itself for attack. Every human in the galaxy was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. All units, Harrison said calmly into his communicator, execute final protocol. What happened next would be remembered as the day the galaxy learned what humans were really capable of. The council fleet never saw the first attack. One moment, they were in formation, confident in their overwhelming numbers. The next moment, their flagship simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed in an explosion, not torn apart by weapons fire, it simply wasn't there anymore. What happened to the Eternal? Glory? Morvek demanded from his command ship. Unknown, sir, his tactical officer replied, voice shaking. It just vanished. Then another ship disappeared, and another. Council vessels were being erased from existence with no visible weapons fire, no energy signatures, no explanation. All ships, evasive maneuvers, Morvek ordered. But there was nowhere to run. The human forces weren't using conventional tactics or fighting from fixed positions. They were everywhere and nowhere, striking from directions that didn't exist, using weapons that turned the laws of physics into suggestions. Captain Elena Vasquez commanded one of the human ships attacking the council fleet. Her vessel, the Defiance, looked nothing like traditional starship designs. It was sleek, predatory, and equipped with technology that would have been considered impossible 30 years ago. Target the command ship, she ordered her weapons officer. Temporal, disruption torpedoes locked and ready, came the reply. Fire. The weapon that struck Morvek's ship didn't explode on impact. Instead, it created a bubble of altered time around the vessel. From the outside, the ship appeared to slow down, then stop completely. Inside, the crew experienced time normally while watching the universe speed up around them. They were trapped in a temporal prison, aware but helpless. Similar fates befell council ships throughout the system. Some were caught in gravitational fields that folded space around them. Others found themselves phased partially out of normal spacetime. Still others simply had their electronics turned against them by viruses that shouldn't have been able to affect galactic standard systems. But the most devastating attack wasn't aimed at the ships at all. Across the galaxy, every council world simultaneously received the same transmission, not through their communication networks which had been compromised, but directly into the minds of every sentient being on the planet. It was a simple message, but one that shattered the foundation of galactic civilization. The transmission contained proof that the Council had been lying for thousands of years, images, documents, recordings, all showing how the benevolent Council maintained power by suppressing technological development in younger species, how they had deliberately prevented dozens of civilizations from reaching their full potential, how the behavioral modification programs had been used on numerous species to create docile, obedient populations. Species that had been told they were naturally less advanced than Council members discovered they had been sabotaged. Worlds that had been classified as developing learned their progress had been deliberately slowed. Entire civilizations realized they had been living as slaves while believing they were partners. The psychological effect was immediate and devastating. Across the galaxy, Council authority collapsed as subject species rose in rebellion. Not just humans fighting alone, but hundreds of species that had been kept down for millennia. On the Althari homeworld, the revelation that their guidance had actually been oppression sparked massive riots. The Gorvani fleet, learning that their technological limitations had been artificially imposed, turned their weapons on Council facilities. Even loyal species like the Korthani began questioning everything they had been told. Admiral Harrison watched the reports streaming in from across the galaxy. The plan was working better than anyone had dared hope. "Sir," Captain Williams reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from 47 different species. They want to join the human coalition." "And the Council fleet in Earth orbit?" "Neutralized. We're holding approximately 2 million prisoners." Harrison nodded. The human strategy had been brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to fight the entire galaxy, they had shown the galaxy the truth about its rulers. Once other species realized they had been oppressed, they became allies rather than enemies. But the real masterstroke was still to come. "Open a channel to all Council worlds," Harrison ordered. His image appeared on billions of screens across the galaxy, not just to government officials, but to every citizen of every species. "People of the galaxy," he began, "today you learned the truth about the system that has ruled you for thousands of years. You learned that your limitations were not natural, but imposed, that your development was not guided, but suppressed. Humanity offers you a choice. You can rebuild the old system with new masters who promise to be more benevolent, or you can join us in creating something different." Harrison gestured, and new images appeared. Human cities where dozens of species worked together as equals. Research stations where scientists from different worlds collaborated freely. Schools where children of all species learned without restrictions. We offer partnership, not patronage. Freedom to grow, not permission to exist. The chance to become everything your species is capable of, without artificial limitations. The choice is yours. The response was overwhelming. Within days, over 300 species had formally requested to join the human coalition. The old Council structure simply ceased to exist as its member species abandoned it for something better. But Harrison wasn't done yet. "Former Council leadership," he said in a separate transmission, "you attempted to modify our children. You tried to remove the very traits that make us human, our curiosity, our independence, our refusal to accept limitations. You failed to understand something important about humanity." Harrison's expression grew cold. "Those traits aren't bugs to be fixed, they're features, and we've spent 30 years making sure our children had them in abundance." A new image appeared. Human children working alongside alien scientists, building impossible machines, asking questions that led to revolutionary discoveries. Children who had been raised knowing that the galaxy was vast and full of wonders, that every problem had a solution if you were clever enough to find it. "Your modification centers were meant to create obedient citizens," Harrison continued. "Instead, you've ensured that we raised a generation of revolutionaries." The final message was delivered directly to the surviving Council leadership, who were being held in comfortable but secure detention. "You will be treated fairly," Harrison told them. "You will be given food, shelter, medical care, and eventually the chance to join the new galactic community as equals. But you will never again have power over others. And if anyone, anywhere, ever again tries to tell humanity or any other species that they need to be corrected to fit someone else's idea of proper behavior." Harrison's smile was not pleasant. "Well, you've seen what humans do when we stop being polite." The war was over. The galaxy would never be the same. And in schools across hundreds of worlds, human children and alien children sat together, learning that the universe was full of possibilities for those brave enough to reach for them. The Council had wanted to change humanity. Instead, humanity had changed the galaxy.